Good day, everyone. Welcome to Answers Life. I hope everybody's doing great today. Well, I got a confession to make today. The confession is I believe I was wrong about the current recession. Let me explain. Now, I made a video, and I forgot which video it was. Maybe it was a couple of videos to where I briefly discussed the recession. Because for those of you that have not had your head between your legs, your head has not been in the clouds. You've been on planet Earth with the rest of us, with the majority of us. We've been in a recession now for the last. Technically, we've been in a recession for the last few years. We've been in a recession technically since 22. It's just that over the last couple of years, things have progressively gotten worse. Initially, I thought that this recession was going to play out very similar to the recession of '08. For those of you that are old enough to remember the recession of '08. And so far, I have been proven wrong. Now, although there are things that are going on right now that went on back in '08, such as massive layoffs, more people losing their jobs. There's also several things that are going on during this recession that did not happen during the recession of '08. And due to those things, I believe this recession is going to be worse, probably significantly worse compared to the recession of '08. Like, for starters, back in '08, when the economy began to take a crap, the housing prices also began to decrease as a result. But apparently, due to some regulations that have been put in place since the recession of '08, when it comes to the housing sector of the economy, more people have been able to keep their houses. More people have been able to work, I guess, with the bank a little more to keep up on their payments or to work some kind of a plan to where maybe at a later time they can catch up with their payments for those that have fell behind on their payments. And also due to the fact that you have a lot of institutional investors buying up a lot of your smaller houses that otherwise would have been the type of houses that many first-time home buyers would have purchased, or people looking to downsize would have also purchased. The housing market right now in many parts of the country is still up. The housing prices are not only up, but in some places, ever since, I would say even in comparison to a year ago, there's certain places in the country where the housing prices have actually increased. For an example, Indiana. Now there are places to where over the last year or two housing prices decreased, but there's also many places where the housing prices increased. And even in the areas of the country to where housing prices may have decreased, the housing prices even in those areas are still up there. They're still up there. They're still way out of proportion in comparison to the wages of many of these local areas. And one and when it comes to rents prices in most parts of the country have risen significantly. Rent prices have risen way faster than the average wages. So one thing I'm seeing during this recession, which I didn't see so much during the recession of '08, is you have a lot more homeless people than you had back in '08. You even have, this time around, you even have more families that are homeless. You got more elderly people that are homeless. You got a lot of people that are unable to afford to buy a house. You got a lot of people that are unable to afford to even rent, more so now than what it was back in '08. And then when you look at the job market, now granted, one thing that I can say is good is I would say it's easier to make easy money now than it was back in '08 because nowadays you can throw up a YouTube channel and get monetized in a few months or whatever the case might be, and then make a little bit of money off of that. And plus, now you have gig work you can get into and make money off of that. As we're back in '08, those options weren't around. But also, speaking of the job market, now during this recession, you have some of your white collar positions being taken over by AI. You also have a bunch more of your white collar positions being outsourced to foreign countries. Than we had back during the '08 recession. You got car prices now that are much higher than what it was back in '08. I remember during the last recession of '08, I think it was maybe in '09 when I filed my bankruptcy. I chose to get rid of both of my cars at that time because I was making payments on them and I couldn't really afford to do that no longer. Now, back in '09, I was able to purchase it was a 1994 Mercury Villager minivan for $450. It started up, it ran. Now, it did have a few issues, but I was able to get from point A to point B in this van. Fast forward to today, let me elaborate for a minute. I had a 1994 Mercury Villager, $450, and this was back in '09. Now, all four tires were bald. The steering, the power steering didn't work. It leaked oil. It leaked and burned oil. And if I were to turn too quick or too hard, the van would stall. And one of the power windows, the power window on the passenger side didn't work. But the van still ran, it drove, and for the most part, I was able to get to wherever I needed to go. Like back then, I was working an hour away. I was living in Tennessee, and this was during the time I was still living in Lewisburg, and I was driving up into Nashville to go to work. So I was an hour away. Now, if I were to go out right now and look for a vehicle in a condition identical to the 1994 Mercury Villager, something like that would probably run $2,000 to $3,000. I'm just guessing. Not to mention that a new vehicle back then was a lot cheaper than what it is now. I can't remember what the price of a newer vehicle was back then. I mean, I think back then, if you wanted to buy something, simple like a Chevy Cobalt, you can buy one of those new for about 14 grand. As for now, that same kind of vehicle today would run you closer to $30,000 or so. And I remember back in the day, I used to own a Chevy Cobalt, which was newer at that time, and my monthly payment was $300 a month. Now the average car payment on the low end is $500 a month, which is 66% more than what I used to pay. So vehicle prices have went up substantially ever since the recession of '08. And also back to the job market. You see, back in '08, you didn't have ghost jobs. If you saw a job opening online, chances are they were truly hiring. It's just that maybe for one opening, there may have been 200 people applying for that same position due to the economy being crappy. Nowadays, you might have an opening and they tell you everything you need to do and what you and all the qualifications you need to have. And then once you apply for that position, you give all your personal information. You find out later that it was a ghost position, and or two after a while you come to the conclusion that position was a ghost position, and in reality they're not hiring nobody at all. You know, they're just all they're doing is collecting information, which they'll probably sell to a third party for a profit. As for in '08, you didn't have to worry about stuff like that. And back in '08, if you were to apply for a job, a lot of the ads were manually typed. As we're now, a lot of the stuff is AI. Now, back in '08, a lot of the people, I mean, a lot of the, back in '08, human beings actually went through and they looked at your applications or resumes. Now, in a lot of these larger companies, AI will do it. Or two, they got some kind of software that will do it, which I think is AI. So, dude, so it also, of course, right now we are going through inflation. Now, during the recession of '08, we did go through a little bit of inflation because I remember back in '08, gas prices were $4 a gallon, and I remember them days. I mean, I was so strapped for cash that I was taking out payday loan advances in order to survive back then. Those were the days, fun times. Well, not really, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, now, I mean, gas may not be $4 a gallon in most parts of the country, but everything else is way up. I think in '08, if I can recall, you used to be able to buy eggs for maybe a couple of dollars. As for now, eggs are up to $6. So I think due to the current inflation, due to the fact that you have a lot of institutional investors buying up a lot of your more affordable houses, and also due to some of the shenanigans going on in the job market, such as ghost jobs being posted. I think due to stuff like that, this recession that we're going through right now, is going to prove to be worse than the recession of '08. And also, let's not forget about the rent prices being at an all-time high. Let's not forget about that. Because back in '08, if you wanted to rent a studio apartment, like for an example, yeah, if you wanted to rent a studio apartment, at least in the Midwest, you can rent one for about $400 a month and still be in a safe working class neighborhood. As we're now, for $400 a month, you're probably not going to find anything out there. Or if you do, it will be in the ghetto. But, or two, that $400 apartment will, today, that same apartment will run you about 550 or 600. So yeah, I think that this recession is going to be worse than the recession of '08. Now, the other question is, should we be concerned about this? Should we worry about this? I mean, naturally, many of us are going to be worried about a lot of stuff. I'm not going to lie to you people. Sometimes I worry about some stuff financially speaking. But, and this is easier said than done, I get it. But at the end of the day, it's going to do none of us not one lick of good to worry. It's going to do not one lick of good to be stressed over the current recession. I mean, for those of you that are younger, what's going on now is not the first time. I mean, this is not the first time that this country has underwent a recession, and it won't be the last time. And I would say, on average, I would say every 15 years or so, you can look for something like this to transpire. You can look for companies to reset on a massive scale, kind of like what's going on right now, like what went on back in '08, for those of you that are old enough to remember that. And as companies look for new ways to cut down labor costs, to cut down overhead, as companies reset on a massive scale, we as everyday American citizens in this case, we're going to also have to look for ways in our personal lives to reset. And again, that's easier said than done. But that's what we're going to have to do. And as stressful as it might be, as inconvenient as it might be, at the end of the day, it's not going to do no good to stress over it. It's not going to do no good it's not going to do no good to stress over it. It is not. The only thing we can do is get out here and just make it happen the best we can for ourselves. That's all we can do. And that's all I got for you guys. Stay blessed. Catch you all in the next one.